Forgot the important part. Turns out you need that. You can't really see the person on the episode if you don't have the person. Hey, I don't know who's gonna watch because we just you and I are both having problems on YouTube. Is it down for anybody else? I don't know. It feels weird.
We're about to find out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't load it on the incognito mode. You tried it off the Wi-Fi on your phone, right?
And I don't know what the opposite of live stream is. Dead stream. Let's not go there.
Yeah, that's not great. It's I don't like that at all. So anyway, hi everybody that managed to make it on. I don't know what's going on. Also, yesterday, I thought it was like, I think they might have been having trouble yesterday too, because come to think of it, StreamYard was giving me fits creating the stream on YouTube yesterday.
At least maybe we're on LinkedIn.
I mean, yeah, hey, that's a place. I don't know, whatever. I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm just happy if anybody shows up, and somebody did. Hi, Kedar, welcome. I'm glad you made it through whatever. I don't know. Is YouTube? We could actually Google this kind of thing. This is a thing you could probably Google, but Google, I'm not going to tell you if their own service is down, right? Let me see. Is YouTube down? YouTube down detector. YouTube outage and problem maps. Come on. Yeah. Okay. Wait a minute.
Was that LA?
In here. So is it down? I don't know. It's just, it feels like it would be better if it's not.
If you're watching it, if you're able to catch it, tell us in the chat messages where you're catching it, whether it's on YouTube or LinkedIn, or I don't know where all you're broadcasting to. But
they were detecting problems with YouTube that began 21 minutes ago on down for everyone or just me.com.
Is this what happens to pro software developers? Is you get curveballs like this thrown at you in the middle
of the ambient stuff, isn't it? It's never the code. It's everything else. We did a demo yesterday where we were showing like the movement of code from Spring Boot 1 through the current generation, and we were like, wow, what can we show in the data space that is consistent? Because obviously Spring data is growing a lot, and I don't like to show JPA because JPA makes me itchy. I don't like that. So then I was like, what can we show that's been there for like 10 plus years? It's not a new thing. MongoDB. So the Spring code, exactly the same code, because of course, right? Spring, nothing changed in the code, but the freaking database protocol changed. Like the database itself, the way people connect to it has changed in those intervening 10 years. And so I had to change. There's a sleight of hand on the demo. Maybe you didn't see it, but we actually switched Mongos between one version of the code and the other. Like that had to change, not the code. The Spring Boot code's the same, but the database changed. Yeah. So nice segue. Data guy. What's your name?
My name's Greg Turnquist, and some people know me as the lead for Spring Data JPA, but the Spring Data team has like 6 people on it. So we have support for things like Data JPA. Right. For JPA, there's a Spring Data JDBC, Redis, MongoDB, Apache Cassandra.
Right.
I'm trying to think.
You've also got several famous, amazing books. One of which is right here. This is one, right? Learning Spring Boot 3. Very nice, very nice. You've got a YouTube channel, Spring Boot Learning. Very good as well, right? So that's
Kedar says that YouTube's working fine at his end. India, glad to see you coming in from India there, Kedar.
Yeah, small world. I wish I was there. I'm happy to be here. I wish we were there. The food's better.
When's the last time you were in India? Because that's
May or April.
So jealous.
Me too. I bring my stretchy pants. It's like it's delicious. Okay. So anyway, you work on the Spring Data team. But that's okay. We've had you on the show before. I don't think we've done a live stream before, but we've had you on the podcast before. And so for those of you who haven't heard that, you should. But also, quick refresher, right? Like you're not just the Spring Data guy. I think it's very easy for a lot of us on the Spring teams to be good at a thing and then just focus on that. That's nothing wrong with that. You put a lot of investment in learning a particular skill, you stay there. But you, sir.
Well, I have a confession.
What's that?
I'm also the project lead for Spring Web Services, aka SOAP.
Yeah.
So please don't judge me for that. At one time I worked on Spring Helios, which is for cool. REST. Yeah. So the one person working on REST and SOAP is what I call ultimate irony. But SOAP, amazingly, people still need that.
Yeah.
They're kind of forced to need it. There's certain SOAP services out there they have to consume. So if you need the Spring way, then that's the way to go. But
it's just good, and it's really good. It's the contract first approach, right? I quite liked it.
Yeah, and you can, you have options either way if you want to go contract first or the other way around. Right. But SOAP is a tricky technology because it's incredibly brittle. You have to set up every piece of it correctly. And we've had fun upgrading to Jakarta EE9 with SOAP, because a lot of the tools we use in SOAP were inside the JDK and got gutted in Java 17. So I even wrote a blog article about how to overcome that, and somebody using Java 8 with Spring Boot 2.7, but trying to use newer SOAP stuff is also how do I do this? How do I do that? And it's something I go back to from time to time to help people out with.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. It's the SOAP stuff is a part of people's stack. It's just great that we have this great support for it. That's what I love about you, though, is that you've never just said, I'm going to do this. You've always just rolled up your sleeves and just done whatever needed to get done. And there's so many projects that are like that, where they're the lifeblood for a lot of people, and it's just good that we have you here. And even in that, we talked about this before, because you're not just you said you're JPA. You've done other data stuff before, I remember.
Well, we have a sort of we have a team of about 6 people that work on Spring Data stuff. So there's kind of for each module, we sort of have a key person that oversees that. Like Christoph is the principal developer for the MongoDB stuff. Mark Paluk is also the team leader for Spring Data, is the principal developer on Spring Data Redis. But then John Bloom has stepped in to help out on Redis, because Redis is very popular. Mark Paluk also works on MongoDB stuff. Mark is a very talented pinch hitter, and that he knows about MongoDB, Redis, Cassandra. John Bloom did countless hours and thousands of hours of work on Gemfire and Geode stuff, but that is all that sort of his end of life. And so,
but again, back to you. Be the star. Let me make you the star, because I really think you're it's worth celebrating. You also worked on JMS for AMQP.
Oh, that was a long time. That was with Steve Powell. We'd worked on
it's crazy.
Well, Steve Powell was implementing he was implementing the JMS specification on top of AMQP.
Right.
And I worked with them on some of that stuff to help. We're trying to build some demo work on stuff on some of that, and that was interesting. We could get about 95% of JMS onto AMQP, which so cool. That's the thing. That's when I really hadn't realized it until that point in time, that all JMS is a series of interfaces.
Yeah.
It says nothing about the format of the message
or the wire protocol.
Yeah, and AMQP is like the opposite. It defines the wire protocol and the format of every message, and then works up from that.
Right.
And they actually put their specifications in an XML file. So there's all these tools that you can pick up in any language, and they're all the same APIs.
It's amazing.
But something else we'd worked on, like in Data JPA, we have, in all the Spring Data modules, we have this support where you can put pageable in thing to make your query dynamic, to say, well, I want to fetch a page of data. So give me 10 items of data, and then give me the next page and the next page. And so, like, if you write a custom HQL Hibernate query language query, we would go parse the query so we could layer in that pageable request. And don't blame us for this. In the past, we used regular expressions to juggle that. And so it empowered people to put more and more complex queries in there, and like queries with subselects and things like that. But we were getting over our head. So I finally broke down and wrote a parser for Hibernate query, and also for JPQL. I found the
grammar,
the specification for JPA's query language, whatever, and wrote an Antler parser in a couple weeks. And then we did one for Hibernate, and I was halfway into or 3/4 of the way implementing the Hibernate one, and then found out that Hibernate itself uses Antler. So I used theirs as a roadmap to get that parts. And so we've been squashing corner cases but now we can handle about any kind of parser query that comes in. We can go handle it and solve that. And so now we can maybe need a count version of the query. We can know how to go apply a count to it.
So cool.
This kind of stuff. And it's funny, because this is one of the things I had to do in grad school, was do.
You read the Dragon book? And
I've got a copy of the Dragon book somewhere. I tried to find it and take it to our team meeting in Boston, but I couldn't find it. Right. But I had done that, and I took the class. Then I had to actually teach the class in grad school, and then I've used that like 2 other times. So it's like I've done this before, and I found out with Antler it's a lot easier.
Oh, so much easier
to build parsers than it was 25 years ago.
Yeah. Yak and Bison, no thanks. I've been there, done that. I like Antler. Actually, and that's Terrence Parr, right? He's out of Stanford, I think, Berkeley, one of those schools.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He's famous. He's hysterical. He's famous for saying, "Oh, hi. Somebody just joined. Hello. Well, we have questions. Okay, we're going to talk about this in a minute. Chaitanya. Don't worry. Wait, he's doing the interview for me. But Terrence Parr is famous. He's the guy that he's a professor. He created Antler, and he's famous for saying, "Why I spent 5 years trying to automate what would have taken me 5 minutes to do by hand, which is to write a manual parser, right?"
But I read his whole approach was he wanted to make grammar handling easier, accessible, and I feel like amongst my fellow peers, like this is something I actually have a deep understanding for, and it's like I could have beat that, but the Antler made it where I didn't have to dig into that bag of tools to sit there and solve the problem. I was able to get to the solution a lot faster because of his genius in the Antler tools.
And it feels nice to use the API because it's like event driven, and I'm a big fan.
And now there's actually a plugin for IntelliJ IDEA for Antler. So so now if somebody opens up a ticket and they've got a problem with the query, I can grab the query, throw it into the parser inside the IDE, and first of all, figure out, did they even write the query correctly? Is this a legal query or not? And there's big differences between Hibernate and JPA standard query language, and so I can sit there and deduce what's the problem before I go fix it. Something we could not do before we had the parser. So major step forward.
Huge. Let's go. That's amazing. So that's already in the release bits?
Yeah, that went out. That's in the that's in the well, the latest version, we have milestones coming out to support Spring Boot 3.2, but we also have it in the previous version supporting Boot 3.1. So Boot 3.1 and 3.2 have that feature in it.
So are you the poor schlub that has to, here's my bone of contention is that they seem to break the Hibernate APIs every other week. And are you the poor guy that has to spackle over that?
Well, this is something, another confession. Are you tuned in? Are you getting these good confessions here? So something I worked in the trenches for over 10 years before I came to VMware was writing relational database queries. We used Oracle, and I could do, left out of joins in my sleep by that point. So my knowledge of relational database is very extensive. That was non-Java technology. My knowledge of JPA was not quite as extensive. So I have people like Ali and Jens Schauder who actually did work with JPA for 10 years to kind of to back me up and to assist me. But the other thing is this parsing stuff is introduced with the Boot 3 series, which is on Hibernate 6. And so Hibernate 6 made some major changes. And so we've gotten a lot of tickets open because of Hibernate 6 and deep nested stack traces where it's breaking inside Hibernate. So I've gotten very good at spotting, is this actually a Hibernate only bug, and closing the ticket and recommending you need to go open a Hibernate issue.
And that one's a doubly problematic sort of situation because they did the upgrade to Jakarta E and they changed the API. So there's no way to move to just Jakarta E without also changing a code, which is exactly what most of us don't want,
It's a bugbear, but welcome to software development.
I mean, but so to the extent that people have to use the annotations in JPA, there's going to be at least a find and replace for every move, no matter what they're doing. But because they're using Spring data in JPA, it's entirely possible that that's the surface area of your code is the autoconfig, and you don't see that anyway. Right?
And what I don't know, this is something I'm curious about. Deshaun's got that his Spring Boot migration script that he does to help move stuff along, and I'm hoping it handles those Jakarta namespace changes, because it's I don't want a Hibernate app with 800 entities that I got to go do that too.
So that's open rewrite, right? And it does it does that, but it also does some weird stuff around, specifically I think with JPA. It tries to move to the Java 17 and it pulls in. Actually, you have to actually go in there and prune the build file. It adds a whole bunch of Jakarta XML stuff that it thinks we need, when of course that was a refactoring done in the absent the awareness of Spring Boot starters, right? It's clear there's a Jakarta JPA Hibernate migration that's not part of the Spring migration, and one overwrites the other, and it's they don't play well yet. But yeah, it's getting there. It's really, really smart, that open rewrite stuff. Wow. So this JPA stuff, I guess, how long have you been doing the JPA?
Like a year and a half. We sort of did an analysis of all the different modules. We looked at what was the community using the most, and and then we looked at our resources, who was assigned to what, and we realized we sort of had 2 people allocated to data JPA, which sort of meant that 2 people, 50% meant there was not one person 100% looking at it. And so we realized that was sort of a misalignment. So we rearranged it. So I took over as the lead for Spring Data JPA. So that was my primary job, to come in and look at tickets, new issues, resolve stuff, things like that.
Right.
So we could have focus on that. And, and that's right. I needed to warm up on that. I could consult either like Jens would come in the morning on German time and sit there, and he would sometimes sift through tickets and spot like, oh, this looks like a Hibernate issue.
Yeah.
And disposition it. So by the time I got in, I had some assistants there and spotted like, okay, well let me wrap this ticket up.
Right.
Versus, okay, this is another one. Let me go write a test case or something and go hammer this out. So it's been a learning process, and I feel like I've learned a lot more JPA since then. And it's JPA is like this never ending thing that you keep learning, that is just more and more and more to it. To where I think it was on Dan Vega's live stream, and I said, well, in the beginning, it feels like JPA gives you wings in the way it can lift you up with this object automated mapping stuff. But there can be a certain point where you get to the brink and you enter like what I call the ninth circle of JPA, where it's like, so, and I was talking to somebody earlier at the Spring booth thing here at the SpringOne conference, and they described their situation where they're in a circumstance where they have like 800 different schemas and they're having to map a lot of mapping stuff. And I said, if you're needing this amount of fine-grained control over your queries, you may, and they hadn't started yet, I was like, you may want to investigate Spring Data JDBC, because that may be a better fit where you need more hands-on control for your queries than offloading that to a JPA provider.
The Gavin Kings of the world will say that the Hibernate ORM sweet spot is precisely when you've got a lot of tables that are consistent and that you're not fine-tuning or but because it's relationships, right? As soon as you start adding foreign keys, that starts to grow non-linearly, and the complexity of that starts to become problematic. The more relationships you have in your tables, that's where the ORM has its great sweet spot. But these days, most of the things I build are like, I don't know, 5 entities, whatever, not huge. And so I've never felt it's been years since I felt like I needed that extra power, and it is power, but it is also.
And it's tricky to go and analyze stuff. We do a lot of demo code and stuff, and we go in to show people stuff, but that's different than going into production where somebody's got a system with 800 tables.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe 95% of it is on proper third normal form, but then they had to denormalize some of the tables for optimization reasons. That's stuff we had to do in production. And in that case, you're having to go sit down with the DBA and go run your a specific query through explain plan to sit there and try to deduce, okay, why is my query slowing down by a factor of 1,000 over the past 2 years? And I found out, well, in this database, when I joined at this point, it would enter a full table scan, and the related table had grown from 1,000 rows to 1,000,000 rows. So there you need to go rewrite a query. Good luck sitting down with the DBA and talking about a Hibernate query. They're not going to know what that Hibernate is. And if you're like going to Hibernate saying, I need to see what the SQL is that the Hibernate's generating. Well, that's not what Hibernate does. So you're, in that context, like your only way out, if you're going to stay with the technology, is to write a native query with JPA, where you're basically saying, I'm opting out of JPA altogether, except for resource management. Right.
It's certainly a thing you can do.
And it's, it may be something you need to do, or it may be, and this is something we're trying to wedge into our talk, is there may be points in time where you're like, this method itself really just needs to not be part of the Hibernate thing. So we're going to write a custom impl, and this is what you can do with Spring Data. This is a custom impl, and we're going to delegate it. And in this one, I'm just going to grab the JDBC template that's already there and write the whole thing myself.
So you're talking about so that's a feature that I'm not sure some people know about. It's very powerful, and it's not unique to Spring Data JPA, but it is a thing you can do, which is you can provide actual implementations for those methods on those interfaces. Mm-hmm. It involves 3 types: one which is the actual interface, another one which is the extension, and then an implementation of that extension.
Yeah, and it's a really cool feature when you're like, okay, 90% of my queries, they work great with the Hibernate stuff. Fine, use that, leverage the repository thing. Yeah. But if you're writing that business report where you need to join 20 different tables and you're having to write this query that turns into a 3-page long thing that you fine-tuned with the DBA, well, JPA doesn't fit the bill for that necessarily. So you can, like you said, use the custom impl solution and reach for a different tool, whether that's JDBC template or
I love JDBC template. That's my friend.
That was my gateway drug into Spring in the olden days. I saw JDBC template.
Oh, by the way, we have a live studio audience here. There we go. And our friend Luke Smith.
Dude,
I don't know.
That is just a violation.
I'm not gonna tell his name on the open airwaves.
He did not sign proper disclosure paperwork.
Exactly. There you go. So anyway, he's a JDBC template fan apparently as well. That's great. JDBC template is amazing, and also the database, the JDBC client. I'm liking that.
That's
liking
cool.
that
That's
too.
cool. Now, I'm trying to remember if that's Jurgen that came up with that one, but that was.
Well, that's another thing. So you work on Spring Data JPA, but now increasingly it seems like all the new and novel is. I mean, there's still the local container entity, local session
container
factory.
beam.
Yeah, like that whole thing in the Spring Framework layer. But now more and more of the interesting stuff is being pushed up into the Spring Data modules. But like this Hibernate 6 thing, that must have been working with Jurgen, right? Because he's still maintaining that.
Well, I have to admit the bulk of the work we did for Spring Data JPA to support Hibernate was actually done by Oliver Dropbaum. So
right.
he's Ollie's the prior team leader for Spring Data, but he's been heavily working on Spring Modulus, and he gave a talk on that yesterday afternoon.
Yeah. We're at SpringOne, by the way. You could be here too if you weren't having better food in other parts of the world. You weren't busy doing that. I understand why, but you could be here.
But you told me you liked the hamburger you just had.
We did. Okay, so we had a fat burger. It's literally called Fat Burger. Don't ask us about our prospects.
Don't judge us.
I mean, you can. It's probably fine. I don't know. Anyway, it was good, okay, but it's not like there's a lot of great food here in Vegas. Come for the content, not for the food.
Well, not without. I mean, you could get good food if take out another mortgage and go to primo restaurants or some of the most premium Dave Ramsey restaurants type.
I went to Gordon Ramsay. Dave Ramsey's a finance.
Yes, I'm like, why did I do that?
Ramsey's. No, I went.
It's raw. Wait a minute. Is that going to get your video demonetized?
What's raw?
Sorry, that's what Gordon Ramsay says. It's raw.
Oh yeah. No, I went to his restaurant here the other day. Anyway, I digress. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of interesting because all the other Spring Data modules, there's no like Mongo support in Spring Framework, right? It's just all in Spring Data.
No, and that's more of probably a legacy thing. Like I wonder, I don't know this, but you could speculate that if Spring Data had started at the same point in time as Spring Framework, a lot of this data stuff may be in the corresponding.
JPA would live there. And from the perspective of a consumer using Spring Boot, they don't know really. They don't even care which jar it lives in anymore.
Well, and as a counterpoint to that, it just came to my mind is in Spring Data Relational, which Jens Shatter manages. We have both support for Spring Data JDBC and we have Spring Data R2DBC. And there they did create a R2DBC template, but actually that did get transferred into Spring Framework. So there's a Spring R2DBC module in Spring Framework where the R2DBC template is now. And that's so cool. So on a rare occasion, stuff will move into Spring Framework, but they run a tight ship at being careful as to what gets pulled in there or not.
Can't blame them. It is insanely difficult.
Well, for something that's been around for 20 years, 20-year celebration. This is the 20th year for Spring Framework. Did you know that? What other open source toolkit has affected this many millions of users and still lived for 20 years? I mean,
Linux, but again, it's had major rewrites. Spring hasn't. Like it's just I can't think of JUnit, but even that has had major rewrites.
Yeah.
Your databases, Postgres, of course, they've been around for 30 years. But of course, very few things is my point. It's a rarefied era at this point.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy how just pervasive and amazing this technology is. Just really good, and it's because of people like you. Like I'm saying, it just takes a lot of people to keep the engine moving because there's all these externalities, like we talked about. MongoDB's database protocol changed. Hibernate itself seems to change every other Wednesday. I was talking to Craig Walls the other day. We were talking about Spring Social and how the APIs there for the social network used to change every week without notice or anything. And it's like Spring is Spring, but it's also this glue that connects you to the outer world, which always changes.
And Spring Social had this funky issue. I remember that because it did two things. It both mapped their graph API for Facebook or whatever, whatever the API was for the social network, the bindings. But then they had also implemented that OAuth 2 dance to simplify that, which is a really nasty thing if you go try to read the spec on OAuth 2. And so the thing that everybody really needed that was eternal was the OAuth 2 stuff, and the bindings were like changing, like you said, every week.
Yeah.
So, but they eventually made that a proper module over in the Spring security team with the support for doing OAuth, whether you're serving it or consuming it. And so
it got better. But at one point with Spring Social, we had Spring Security OAuth, a separate project, and then we had the Spring Cloud OAuth. It just got very confusing, and now it's all better. Okay, so I guess we looked at the time. I'm mindful of our times here. We have a great question, and this is the one I was going to ask you earlier. Great question, which is, hello, Greg. Glad to meet you. That's nice of you to say. Thank you, Josh, for hosting this live. My pleasure, truly. My friend, this is a friend. We had burgers, and then we came here and talked. We would have done this without the microphone. Just more fun with the microphone. My question is, what's the future of Spring Data? Future, I suppose that's future.
That would sound right.
I mean, in the next year, what are features that we can expect? That's a good question. The Oracle has it.
So we've one of the things we call it Spring Data Next. That's a version that supports Spring Boot 3.2, which is the emerging version, which we're currently on. I think we put out milestone 2 just this past week.
Yeah.
For the Spring Data component of that. Some of the stuff is we've got the HQL and JPQL query parser built into that. We've got the other thing is we're dealing with so we're on Hibernate 6. A lot of the bits of that, the Hibernate 6 stuff is maybe not as much of an effect on the end users, but for framework developers, we're having to go deal with that. We're ironing out some bugs on that stuff to try to make, the big deals with Spring Data. We're trying to make this process simpler. We're trying to make it where if you're using JPA, we're trying to simplify it so if you want to, you really can inject the entity manager into your service layer and use it directly. I don't recommend it.
And also you have to use it. So this is the thing. Is there a way for me to get an entity manager without using @persistence context on a field? I just want to be able to say @autowired on a constructor, or better yet, not have the @autowired at all.
Well, you'd have to auto-wire or you'd have to inject it into something. And
right. Can I inject the factory? I guess I have to inject the factory, but I want the actual just realized. You know what I'm saying? Can I just have a proxy injected for the entity manager without having to do @persistence context?
I'm not sure because in general, we don't recommend this strategy. If you're doing this, why not just go use Hibernate directly if you're really going to go that route? Instead, we provide you with the really convenient repository abstraction over it. So, for this 80% of your queries that you're writing, you can just define a method and then we'll go handle the actual legwork of talking to the entity manager, whether that's going through the criteria API or shipping the query over. One of these K patches is you can write the Hibernate query yourself and use the @query annotation.
Yeah.
We're also making sure
that's a Spring Data thing on the method repository methods. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can put that on there. And, the other thing is we're just stopping out, we're trying to round out, like there's, we run into some bug stuff, we close it, or we try to spot that this is an issue that Hibernate needs to fix. So part of it is we're just trying to correspond with the Hibernate team to help them, spot stuff that they can fix on their end. Some of the sneaky stuff we're running into is like the JSR 305 Java.time types. Some people ask questions about why don't you properly convert an instant to a date time offset object? And it's like, because we don't know what time zone you're in. So we don't do that. We can't know otherwise. We can't know where you are. That's an application level thing. So anyway, those are just some of the features we're doing on that.
That's amazing. Superficially sounds the query stuff is huge, brand new thing, but basically superficially, this is going to be one of thousands of features that are improvements over straight JPA and Hibernate, right?
Well, we try to make it where you're able to. The real focus should be, you should not be thinking too hard on this is what I'm doing for JPA or persistence. It's what do I need to solve my business case? My business needs this piece of data out of the system. What do I do to get to that? So we do things like query by example or these custom finder methods. Like the custom finder methods are fine for very simplistic things about I'm doing a select against a table and I'm filtering on two fields or something like that. That's where these custom finders are handy. But we have new stuff like, you can do a find top 10 or find, and now we have you can supply a limit object. So it becomes dynamic. So you can say limit of 10.
Oh, so you can programmatically new up the limit before you.
Or you can say limit dot unlimited.
Oh.
We also have key set pagination that we've added. So we used to do for like pageables, you would have to provide the size of a page and its offset. So you say, I'm querying, my page size is 10. I need the offset. I need the 5th page. So in a very simplistic way, you're looking for the 50th element, So if you change the size of your page, you have to go start over again at the beginning because it recalculates where everything is. Offset, this new scroll API that's rolled out, which we have support. It's kind of like that. You can say, I'm scrolling. I want to go to this offset, this position. It can calculate it from there. Then the other phenomenon is you're querying for a gigantic result set and it throws away the first 4 pages. So instead, with scroll API, it's a more efficient query that can just jump to the offset, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's able to leverage things like indexes and stuff. So it writes a more performant query. And then we have some window operators, so you can get back a window of data, or you can get a window iterator. So maybe you get a window size of like 10 items, but you just want to go row by row. Well, you can just iterate over each person or each row. And when you get to the end of that, it will seamlessly grab the next window and just keep scrolling through. So you're more effective at going through the data. This is the new scroll API that we have.
That's amazing. I didn't know about that. That's pretty cool. See, these are like so many things that just make this low level stuff less painful. And I just have to, I hate to use the word painful when it comes to an API, but Hibernate has caused me actual pain in my life. Speaking of Hibernate, actually, in theory, there's other JPA implementations. How much of the work is involved for any of that?
Amazingly, it's not a lot. It's really like 95.2% of the world uses Hibernate.
Yeah,
there's
the one
we do have support for Eclipse Link, and we have some CI integration tests to check for Eclipse Link, but that's the bulk of it right there.
Is there even a starter anymore for Eclipse Link on the initializer?
I don't know what's on the initializer. I know we have.
I think it's just if you bring in Spring Data JPA, you get Hibernate. That's the way it's always been, and over the 10 years we've had support, and that's fine.
It feels like your fun joke you would give on stage when you're like, some of you use IntelliJ, some of you use Spring Tool Suites, some of you use VS Code, and for the one person in the back that uses Emacs, hey,
yeah, exactly.
So we support Eclipse Link. But principally we try to support JPA. So we try to support the contract and the official interface. So if you're wanting specific Hibernate features, we may not necessarily offer them directly. When you're designing your domain objects, your entity objects, you're using either JPA annotations, or you have the liberty to use Hibernate specific annotations on that, and that objects can be turned over to Hibernate. So that's kind of up to you to look up. And I think you can go find books out there, whole books on how to design your domain objects to work with Hibernate.
I mean, it is it's got a huge community. So, I can say what I will, but there's no doubt that there's a solution out there for you. It's been done before. Somebody's thought of it, right? So there's at least that. My friend, I'm trying to be mindful of time here. Okay. So what else should we talk about? Anything else I forgot to mention?
Well, I don't know. We may have to wrap it up here. Maybe.
What did we talk about here? So what you talked about Spring Data JPA?
Talk about Data JPA
at the conference here?
Yeah, we did talk yesterday. Jens and I did one. The fun part about that was some of the JPA stuff we delved into. He cited that would be good information to go attend his talk he had given 4 hours before that one.
Oh,
so I thought it was fitting that on my last slide I had a reference to Back to the Future on there. It was,
okay, and presumably that will be recorded. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't think in the room we were at it was recorded. So I think they're live streaming like the keynote stuff. But this year's event, if you're not on the main stage, I'm not sure it's definitely no video, and I'm not even sure if the audio is recorded on that. But they will. I think they are going to publish all the content. Don't quote me on that stuff.
Yeah,
so,
we have no idea. Nobody tells us anything.
I don't know, but I think all the decks we had to submit to the conference overlords, and so I think they will definitely be publishing the slides as some form of content.
Okay, that's good. See, good decks are everything. Okay. I want. So are you on the internet, and do you want to be found? If so, where can people find you?
Go to YouTube at Spring Boot Learning. If
it's not
if
down.
YouTube will work.
I'm gonna get the link.
Now we're going to be in your live stream.
Okay. Put that.
Huzzah!
I haven't forgotten to publish This Week in Spring. It's Tuesday today. I published it today. But you're right. I do.
You've been doing that for 13 years. You realize that?
I know, and I haven't missed a one. So I've been publishing this. Ambu said, well, first of all, hold on. This is the comment to which we're reacting. So for those of you who are confused, now we'll leave that there. Ambu says, I forgot to publish.
Look at the expectation you have set. You're in your Pacific time, so you still have a few hours to make the deadline.
Well, that's just it. I've been in Asia for the last 2 months, and so because I've been doing it Tuesday there, it's it'll be, if I publish it in the evening there, it's still like early afternoon here in California, right? And the day before. So I think people sometimes think I'm publishing it on Monday, when in fact it's Tuesday, but I'm in.
Somewhere I sense a joke about offset date time.
Yeah, this is
somewhere. Is there a joke for that? If you've got it, post it in the chat.
We need that feature, right? Okay, so you great YouTube channel, big fan. What else, the books? What's your website where people can go learn about everything?
We can go springbootlearning.com.
All right, let me get that. Springbootlearning.com. Okay, good. Take all that. Good. No, buddy. No, no problem. Just don't worry. I appreciate you looking out for me because I sometimes get to almost to like 11:30. I'm like, oh, I forgot to do it, and because I haven't missed one. I haven't missed an episode of that thing.
You're gonna be like 80 years old in the hospital, but I got to get it out. I got it.
I mean, there are worse fates. That's like that'd be
and then
great.
I'll be at the other end of the room. Okay, I read it.
Okay, wait, let me put that out there. Hold on, sorry. Up. Ta-da, ta-da. Okay, well, this is fun.
Awesome.
I appreciate you, my friend. Good to see you, as always. The rest of you, I wish you were here. It's SpringOne. It's pretty good. And it sounds like some of the content won't be online, maybe. We don't know. That's not great. That's why you're missing out.
If you can see it, give it a thumbs up.
Yeah. If you can see it, like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. All right, everybody. Bye. Stay tuned. I'll have more live streams later today with other equally amazing people.
Hit subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss a thing.
Yeah.
So you don't miss a thing.
YouTuber right there.